Coming up tonight on the news at 5, construction on a solution around the landslide impacting Ketchikan began today, when it's expected to be completed. And protests in Alaska, why people took to the streets. Then Congress is back in session, what they will take up in your week ahead in Washington.
You're watching Alaska's news source.
Thank you for joining us on your News at 5. We begin this evening with an update to the fatal avalanche that occurred on Saturday. According to Alaska State Trooper Dispatch, a group of snow machiners were riding on the backside of Seattle Ridge, just northwest of Seward Highway. The witnesses say a teenager triggered the avalanche and died after being buried. At the time of the dispatch, the body was located in an unstable area known as the warm-up bowl. Recovery efforts are set to be conducted today. The Chugach National Forest Avalanche Information Center asks that people avoid the area. Next of kin have been notified. We will keep you updated as more information gets released. And construction on the temporary bypass around the landslide that happened near Ketchikan has started. The project started around 6:30 this morning. The single-lane bypass is being built to restore limited daytime travel. Once the bypass is completed and opened, residents are encouraged to use the bypass only for necessary travel and should expect significant delays as vehicles that were left stranded are relocated. The bypass is expected to be completed and opened this evening. If you're traveling to Ketchikan, you should consider being dropped off or carpooling, as the Ketchikan International Airport parking lot has been full on an intermittent basis. Water shuttle and North End bus services will continue operating until the main road fully opens. We'll update you as more information becomes available. Now let's head on over to the Weather Center for a first look at the forecast with Robert Forget.
Hey, well, thanks, Adelmi. I tell you what, it's been a nice day throughout much of Alaska. Let's go ahead and look at some of those conditions right now. Lots of sunballs out there. We are seeing below zero readings and only for just up on the slope at Dead Horse. The rest, we're seeing temperatures at least 0 or above in Utiavik, also seeing 0 in Kotzebue, but down farther south, we're looking at 43 in Anchorage, 41 in Juneau, 46 down in Ketchikan, and 48 in Yakutat. In the interior, it's all sunny with 37 in Fairbanks, 37 Eagle River, 34 in Tok, and even Denali popping 38 degrees. 38 was the high in Fairbanks today, 5 of the low, normally 28 and 0. We've seen conditions throughout the state being a little bit warmer than they have through the other seasons before. And in Anchorage and also throughout much of South Central, all sunshine with temperatures in the 40s with 45 in Palmer, 46 in Wasilla, and we're seeing 46, as I mentioned, in Cordova. This is a look in Anchorage. Boy, nice day, clear, as they say, bluebird day with no clouds. 44 the high, 25 the low, normally 35 and 20 for Anchorage. And taking a look at just a peek for Anchorage, mostly clear tonight. 24 the low, and no wind to speak of. And around the state, just a quick look at some of the forecasts for tomorrow. 44 Anchorage, 36 in Fairbanks and Bethel at 6, all seeing mostly sunny skies and still a little bit of rain expected in Juneau, and 43 degrees. That's a look, quick look at the weather. We'll have a complete forecast coming up in a bit.
Thank you so much, Robert. We'll see you soon. Protests occurred throughout Alaska on Friday. The Alaska Beacon reported hundreds rallied at the Alaska State Capitol on Friday for a People's March. But that wasn't the only march that happened on Friday. You've been seeing footage taken in Fairbanks. Protesters marched throughout the city, some protesting Elon Musk and the federal cuts that have impacted the states, others waving Ukrainian flags in support of the war-torn nation, and some advocating for you call to your representative in Congress to make sure you have your voice heard, all united in protesting the Trump administration. The march ended in Golden Heart Plaza. The Trump administration and members of the Doge Caucus have defended the spending cuts as painful but necessary.
I think most in this room understand that we have to root out wasteful spending, more responsibly spend the American people's hard-earned dollars, and have a federal government that finally starts to live within its means. Otherwise, we'll just be passing this mess on to our kids and our grandkids.
The next scheduled People's March is set for April 5th. And Congress returns to Washington after spending a week away from the Capitol with an eye on President Donald Trump's agenda. Rashida Kaba has that and more in your week ahead in Washington.
Congress is back in session this week. Republicans now press ahead with President Trump's agenda. It's expected to cost around $4.5 trillion over the next decade. It includes making the 2017 tax cuts permanent, eliminating taxes on tips and overtime pay, and it gives the administration money to secure the border and speed up deportations. Also on Monday, the Supreme Court will hear arguments about if they'll keep Louisiana's congressional map in place. It'll decide whether the state's congressional map has to include 2 black majority districts. Its previous map only had 1. That decision is expected in June. President Trump's team is also set to hold high-stakes meetings to secure a 30-day ceasefire in Ukraine. His team is meeting with officials from both the Russian and Ukrainian governments in Saudi Arabia with hopes a ceasefire will start the process of ending the 3-year-long war. In Washington, I'm Rashida Kaba.
Still to come on the news at 5. Well, it's not quite Easter, and these aren't Easter eggs, but they are gorgeous and decorated. And we'll be right back after this break. Welcome back. Well, it's not quite Easter, and these aren't Easter eggs, but they are gorgeous and decorated. They're pisanki eggs, a Ukrainian craft beginning with a hollowed egg that is coated in beeswax and dyed in layers. After reaching the desired color, the beeswax is wiped away to reveal an intricate design beneath. This Sunday in downtown Anchorage, one crafter was teaching a course on the traditional method. Marie Kaler, the course instructor, tells us she's working to open her own craft store in the near future. While she's working to find a location for winter solstice sewing and crafts, she's teaching workshops in the meantime. Kaler isn't Ukrainian herself, but says she's made many friends in the years she's practiced the craft and says there's always more to learn.
And it's one of those crafts that there's a whole bunch of ways to do it. Everybody has a unique way, and just like every other craft, you can do a deep dive, and it's an unlimited sea of tools and tricks and tips. And just because the way I do it is not the same way that everybody else does it either.
Kaler tells us she hopes to use creative workshops and a future craft store to foster a helpful environment for other crafters by building a network to learn any variety of skills through other experienced hands. 2 high school students from Southeast took part in an international film festival in Vancouver last month, sharing their work on the big screen. Wrangell High School students Jackson Pearson and Celia Morse featured their work in the Vancouver International Mountain Film Festival last month. The pair were joined by their teacher Laura Davies, who works with local students interested in filmmaking. According to Davies, the trip was made possible by the nonprofit See Stories, which supports Alaskan student filmmakers.
It was really nerve-wracking, but at the same time, it was really nice to see all this effort that I had put in, that my mentors had put in with me, and seeing that recognized on the big screen.
Hearing the people that had those huge, nice movies, and they came and complimented my little 5-minute video on my grandma, it was like, oh my gosh, they know who I am.
Morse's film focused on her grandmother's career as a folk musician in the 1970s, while Pearson's was about declining salmon populations and the effect that has on Alaska Native populations. Later on the news at 5, how a young soccer star is leaving his mark on his community. Plus,
I'll have the complete forecast after the break, but first, here's our daylight hours for tomorrow. Anchorage, going to look at 12 hours and 39 minutes, 12 hours and 46 minutes for Fairbanks. Juneau coming in at 12 hours and 35, and we're looking at 12 hours and 39 minutes for Bethel.
Thanks for listening. Click subscribe so you can get the latest podcast from Alaska's news source automatically. And stay up to date with breaking news and in-depth reporting available for free 24/7 with the Alaska's news source app.